Okay, welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I come from the acting background.
And I'm Josh Knapp. I'm a broadcast engineer.
Here we go.
All right. This week we're going to talk about comedies.
Yep.
Comedies.
And so say what you were saying before we started the episode about there's no particular category. Well,
Not for me. I mean, at least when I was coming up with the list, I was like, oh, I got to talk about this one. Oh, I got to talk about that one. But it wasn't like, this is my number one, number two, number three, number four comedy. I don't feel like I can very easily, do that with this genre because there's different, for me at least, there's different reasons for me to want to watch a comedy, I guess. And there's different comedies for the right time.
yeah, I agree. Did you see any of the list online, like the AFI 100?
I didn't look at the AFI 100. I just looked up
Interesting.
like generic kind of like top 100 comedies. And then there's some of them that are like the Rotten Tomatoes one was way, because they just do like top rated, like, 98%, 97%.
Oh, right.
And there's movies that should not be on that list in my opinion, as far as like this movie should be in the pantheon of comedies, it's
Name
like
one.
There were some that were like way too new to be on there.
Oh, yeah.
Like a movie from last year or something that it's just like, well, people are just excited about it or, whatever. I mean, some movies weren't even like, I don't know, Finding Nemo. It's like, I don't really consider that a comedy, but it was on their list. So, I mean, it's a kid's movie. It's funny. There's funny parts, there's touching parts, whatever.
Right.
But I don't really consider that a, full boat, I'm going to go to this and, laugh my head off type of a thing.
Well, the reason why I brought that up is because I did look at AFI's 100 top comedies. I don't know how they categorize it, but it's 100. It's usually 100 that they do. And Fargo was on there. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I don't really think of that as a comedy.
It's really funny, though.
Yeah, but
I mean, the Jerry Lundegaard
really,
stuff, like
yeah.
it's awkward funny, and I have some of those in there. And in fact, a lot of times, those are the movies that I like to revisit and that I get more out of. So
I guess I just think of comedy as something Anchorman,
which I love.
Yeah, which I've never seen actually. So
The first one? Or?
Yeah, I have to mention this too. I think
Okay.
this is going to be one of those shows where you're going to know a little bit more, and I'm going to say, yeah, I haven't seen that one. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
So
yeah.
why is it that you haven't seen? I mean,
I don't know.
Is it because you want to focus on other movies you feel like more important?
I thought about this actually. I think it's the same thing with scary movies.
Okay.
9 times out of the 10, you're probably not going to get a great film. So when you go to the movie theater, well, not 9 times out of 10, but you know what I'm saying? The odds are not in your favor to get a scary movie or to get a funny movie. They usually fall flat.
Yeah.
So if I'm spending my money and time and all that other stuff, it's a certainty issue. And we talked about this with the scary movie one, where if you go see a drama or a dramedy or something like that, you're probably going to get some good acting. You're going to get some, if you're going to watch an Oscar nominated film, you're going to get a certain amount of emotional integrity from it. But with a comedy, you're never sure.
And why pay $10?
Yeah, it's that. And then the kind of waste of time feeling. Not that I ever feel like I'm wasting time when I'm watching a movie, but I could be watching something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or I can watch this 4 months from now at home.
Yeah, there's no rush.
While I'm eating dinner
Yes,
or something.
Exactly. Well, I'm not a do something at the same time kind of guy who, eats dinner or is on the computer. I've got to focus on the movie. But I'll give you an example. It's interesting because there was nothing at Redbox. Well, there was too much at Redbox, actually. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. And I saw the Cameron Diaz movie, Sex Tape. And I was like, you know what? Let me try that. I like that guy, Jason
Segel.
Yes, thank you. And I like her. And I thought, okay, the premise is funny. Adults, 40-year-old somethings, have kids, make a sex tape. What's going to happen here? And it falls flat. It comes in on itself. It doesn't work at all.
Well, the part for me that like when I heard the
Did you
concept,
see it?
No.
Okay.
When I heard the concept, and I probably won't unless it just happens that we see it somehow. But maybe if it's streaming or something, there's nothing else to watch. Maybe, but they give everybody, all of their friends, iPads.
Yeah, it's
that part is kind of like, well, hold on, I've never heard of that before.
Well, he gets them for work. And he's technologically not
inept.
Well, he's not as capable as his 10-year-old son.
Okay.
And so that adds to the plot of the movie. But you're thinking, you get in the beginning of the movie, he says, "Oh, 2 new iPads. I love these things." And you would think if he's getting enough to give to his mailman, which he does, and his friends, and the sex tape is automatically downloaded to all of these things automatically, which it never dawns on immediately. I'm not even that. I don't come from the age of computers. I'm just a generation right before. I thought, can't you delete them too? If you download them all at the same time, can't you delete them too? And of course, yes, you can. So the movie falls in on itself almost immediately.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is that I never once laughed out loud. I never, there was not even a chuckle there. I watched it. They're funny to watch. Rob Lowe has a little cameo. He's like the cameo king, man.
He is.
He's
like
good.
Behind the Candelabra. That was another one.
Yeah, and
where
he
it was a great
got
cameo.
an Emmy or a Golden Globe nomination for that.
yeah.
And he's fantastic in that. And he's pretty funny in this too.
Yeah.
He's the only thing that kind of made me a little bit
He's
happy.
great in Parks and Rec too. Parks and Recreation. That show. He was great in that show.
Yeah, I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of what you were talking about, going off of what you were talking about, where you said you didn't laugh out loud.
Not at all.
And that's not necessarily a showstopper for me, though, because some of my favorite comedies, in fact, like one of my favorite movies of all time, which I would consider a comedy, is Brazil, and you don't necessarily laugh out loud. I don't know if I was trying to think last night. Do I laugh out loud in that movie?
That's a
But
bit
it's
twisted,
so
though, if you think about it.
funny.
It is funny,
It's
but
a
it's
funny movie.
But Fargo, perfect example. Brazil is a perfect example
Yeah.
of where I almost feel bad, or if I laugh at that, what does that say about my psyche as a human being?
I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
Brazil. I get what you're saying. It is funny. There are it's so out of control at parts that you're almost what's going on here. So I get that, but
And it's like you're laughing at the situation or the absurdity of the people in that. Like it's kind of like Brazil takes human nature and takes it to the nth degree as far as like food service, for example. They've gotten to the point where the waiter comes out, shows you a picture of what
Yeah.
your food is, and then you get this like pate that's supposed to taste like
Yeah.
what that food looks like.
plastic surgery.
Yeah, that's funny. It's extremes, but it's not funny as in like I'm laughing out loud, I'm busting a gut. But to me, it's like that internalized like this is funny, and it's a weird feeling.
And also
but
making a
it's
social
good.
statement at the same time.
Yeah.
So answer this: if there was a movie store and you had to break things down in genres, drama, comedy, horror, that kind of stuff, where would Fargo go? Where would Brazil go? Would it go in comedy or would it go in drama?
I would say because Fargo specifically, if you had to pick, I would put it in comedy over drama because I want people to know that like this is not a classic drama. Don't expect a murder mystery type thing out of this, or don't expect it's not like a kidnapping. It's not like Ransom or something.
Yeah, true.
It's not a kidnapping movie like that. I mean, just like the part where Jerry Lundegaard's wife like crashes out of the bathtub and like she rolls down the stairs wrapped up in the shower curtain. I laughed at that
Yeah,
part.
I
but
did
so
too.
did you feel bad when you laughed?
Yeah,
about that?
absolutely.
See, but to me, it's like it's a movie and like it's funny, and I understand the
Steve
situation. is
Buscemi's
so-
face with the tissue paper and
Yeah,
trying to stop the
man.
bleeding. It's funny, but after the wood chipper and the way the movie ends and what happens to her, I just don't. And then William H. Macy's last scene too,
Yeah.
where he squeals like a little child in pain
Yeah.
because he's trying to get away. Nothing about that is funny. Nothing, But you're right. I see what you're saying. I don't know. I just have a hard time saying comedy and Fargo. But
Yeah.
it's almost
But look
too
at the Coen
intellectually-
brothers, though.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. The Miller's Crossing, I guess, would be like the most straight-laced. Maybe Blood Simple.
Blood Simple, yeah.
Those two.
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah,
It's very
it
straightforward.
is straightforward. You're right. There's not really.
Okay,
any
well, let's get
funny
to
parts.
one of mine on my list.
Okay.
Speaking of the Coen brothers, Raising Arizona.
Yes, that's on my list too.
It's hilarious, but you can tell that's set out to be a comedy,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's not. It's not set up a situation, set up a joke, set up a punchline, go. listen for the laugh track. It's not like that at all. It's the little things in that film that make me laugh. When the baby's first kidnapped and the policeman's interrogating, or I guess questioning the father, and he's like, "What is the baby
Nathan in
wearing?"
Arizona, yeah.
What was the baby wearing? And he's like, "I don't know, jammies with Yoda and shit on them." And for whatever reason, to me, just the way he just kind of throws away, like, "What are you talking about? It's a baby. What do you think? What do you mean? What is he
Yeah.
wearing?"
He's like, come on.
Yeah, it's illogical. It's but
But it's a statement on the police, though, the police department
Absolutely.
and police departments in general.
Absolutely, but you can. It's sort of set up more as a joke, you know. But then there are the moments like with John Goodman. We love that baby too, Hyde. Bring that baby back. We love. There are small little moments that are set up that you know are a setup for a joke, and for whatever reason you either laugh or you don't. It's one of those movies that can make or break a relationship, in my opinion, because my father and I love that movie, but my mother and my sister hate it.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, wow, if you dated somebody who didn't like that movie, or if you were married to somebody who didn't like that movie, it's a different sense of humor than your
Yeah.
typical comedy. But that movie would go into the comedy category versus Fargo for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that movie is another example of like a perfect, like separate from comedy, it's an example of a perfect like opening 10 minutes. I mean, it takes so long to get to the Raising Arizona, like the title
Yeah.
screen. It's great. And there's that music like just along the whole time. Maybe it's not 10 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes, but it's just perfect. It's their relationship building to the point where he gets arrested multiple times and they finally, you know,
Turn to the left.
They meet each other. And we were talking about Nicolas Cage off podcast because I just saw Moonstruck.
Right.
And we were talking about kind of what we both thought about his performance in Moonstruck. And I think that maybe for the same reason that he didn't really hit me properly in Moonstruck, he uses that same commitment maybe in this movie in Raising Arizona, and it's perfect. Like I feel like that's a lived-in character. That's like a on-the-face character. I can see what that character is going through. I'm not saying it's a dumb character
No,
necessarily.
no,
I'm just saying it is. I can see all I need to see from how he's, you know, inhabiting that character.
Well, I think that's why Nicolas Cage kind of makes people mad, is because he's done such great work. You know, Raising Arizona. What's the
Leaving Las Vegas, I never saw.
Well, he won
but
the
I know
Oscar
he
for
won the
that.
Oscar,
He was
yeah.
Adaptation.
Adaptation was great.
Yeah, he's fantastic in that. He's
Played two roles in
Yeah, he
that.
played two people. What's the one? I can't think of it right now. I can't think of it. But anyway, the point is that he has such great roles that when he does all this other stuff in between, you're like, what is Wicker Man? What is all that stuff about?
Hey,
but
he's trying to. He spends money like it's
yeah,
water.
apparently
so,
he does
yeah.
have money issues, but you're right. He is on point in that movie. He is the center of that film, and he never wavers at all. But that's definitely a comedy that I think anybody who appreciates a good, funny movie should see Raising Arizona. But like I said, it either hits you or it doesn't.
Yeah, and the Coen brothers, I mean, they have multiple. I mean, I Burn After Reading, and
Yeah.
we're gonna have a whole. We're gonna have. You know what? Though, how many times have you seen it?
Once.
Okay, we're gonna have a whole podcast on this at some point about why both of us we kind of. I don't know who brought it up, but I've realized, and you kind of agree with me that it seems like the first time I watch a Coen brothers movie, it doesn't hit me. Now, Raising Arizona was different because the first time I saw that, I really got it and I understood it and I enjoyed it. But a lot of these
Fargo.
other movies, Fargo, I think so too. But especially their comedies like Intolerable Cruelty, the
Burn
the
After
other
Reading.
Burn After Reading. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was
Yeah.
was okay, but Burn After Reading, I saw it in the theater and I was like, I just wasted whatever $7, whatever it was back then. And then I watched it, I rented it. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try this again. I rented it. Big Lebowski was the same thing.
I still haven't given myself to that film. I can't. People
Big
love,
Lebowski, or okay,
Yeah, I can't get
See,
into
and
it.
You've probably seen it once.
I can't. Fully yes, from beginning, middle to end, yes, but bits and pieces
So
since.
to me, like another one that happened to me, not a Coen Brothers movie, was Napoleon Dynamite. I revisited it. Still, I do not
Never
enjoy
seen
that
it.
movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lot of people like it, and it is in some ways it's quotable, but I don't think it's quotable for the right reasons. I think that Big Lebowski is quotable for the right reasons, and it's hard to describe that, but after seeing it multiple times, Philip Seymour Hoffman in that movie is brilliant, and you probably don't even remember that he's in it.
I actually don't.
He's brilliant.
I actually don't remember him in that.
Anyway, there's certain scenes in Big Lebowski. Big Lebowski, I think, is in a lot of ways it's better than Raising Arizona, but it's not as accessible as Raising Arizona. I think you could sit more people down and they would enjoy Raising Arizona over Big Lebowski. So you lived in LA, so there's certain things about Big Lebowski that are LA centric.
The bowling alleys and all that stuff.
That you might the people from LA or who've lived in LA would understand, or at least understand that world a little bit better. But so yeah, those movies, even Burn After Reading, like I said, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily put it up there with Raising Arizona or Big Lebowski, but there are certain performances in there.
Brad
Pitt's performance
hilarious.
is amazing in that movie.
So is hers. Frances
McDormand.
Yeah.
She was great in Raising Arizona. She was great in Fargo. I mean,
she won the Oscar for Fargo.
Yeah. And deservedly so, I think.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so Coen Brothers, I can't say enough about them, and I'm excited about their next movie called Hail Caesar, which also has George Clooney in it, Jonah Hill, bunch of other people. I think Jessica Chastain's in it. And it's
She's
a comedy.
Everywhere.
I know.
It's a comedy.
It's a comedy.
Okay.
It's about like 1940s Hollywood where George Clooney's a fixer. He comes in and there's issues in the studio because this is studio system movie making. So whatever, the star won't perform or whatever is happening. And then George Clooney comes in and is supposed to fix it. And it's like a day in the life of George Clooney's character in this movie.
How many times have they worked together now?
This will be the third. Well, I mean, I think
Fourth.
they've worked together in Burn After Reading, but this will be the third in their kind of like loose buffoon trilogy that they've done with Clooney. The first one was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Then it was Intolerable Cruelty, which I think is a good movie, but a lot of people really crap on it. But I think it's really funny.
Yeah, maybe I have to see it again because it didn't do anything for me. I like her in that, Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Catherine Zeta-Jones
Yeah,
was
I
good
like
in
her
it.
in that.
But there's some really funny scenes in there that don't. They get short shrift, I guess. The first time you watch it, it seems like a throwaway. But then once you start seeing it again, that's one of those movies I could put on pretty much any time and watch Intolerable Cruelty, which is weird. You wouldn't think of that. Yeah. But anyway, so that was the second movie. This Hail Caesar would be the third movie where he's, I guess, playing some sort of a buffoonish
but
character.
it's 4 times total.
4 times total, but
Wow,
his
he's smart.
character in Burn After Reading. But George Clooney, I mean, you can tell that him and Brad Pitt, they work with people that they want to work with.
Yeah.
That's
Makes
the
sense.
their
So
whole
is
deal.
Big Lebowski on your list?
Yep, Big
list?
Lebowski's on my list. And then I think those were the only, we already talked about the ones, Raising Arizona, Big Lebowski, what I've written down, and then we've talked about the other Coen Brothers movies. And I would say that that's pretty much all that's all I want to say about the Coen Brothers.
Well, I say if you're going to see anything, see Raising Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
That's me.
It's
Yeah.
great. It's great. And we didn't talk about Holly Hunter, but
Oh,
she's awesome.
Turn to the left. We mentioned her. She's
yeah,
there.
we did mention her. Another one I wanted to bring up that I wanted to bounce off you, Bronson, that you saw
With Tom Hardy. As a comedy?
There are some funny parts to that
Dude,
movie.
you're a bit twisted. You seem like such a normal, average guy, and that's kind of twisted though. If you think, yes, I agree with you.
It's not a comedy.
When
but
they go to the fence, isn't that where somebody goes to the corner of the fence? Isn't that in Bronson, and he can't figure out where the entrance is or the exit is?
yeah, I think so.
And he starts to climb over it, and the little kid walks around. Isn't that Bronson?
but
No?
I'm not sure. I don't
No?
think so.
Okay.
But there's
What am I thinking of?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But there's some funny scenes in there. I mean, there's obviously some really dramatic scenes too, but the way that he characterizes his life, he doesn't necessarily take his life seriously. He looks at it as like a performance piece, and I think the real guy does too. But the way that he interacts with other people in some ways, there's scenes where like he's trying to figure out how to like make a sawed-off shotgun, and he's trying to like saw it, but it's not working because he's putting it on a table that's moving, and it's just awkward, and it's that awkward funny that I really enjoy. I mean, The Office, the British The Office,
Yeah,
is
I've
a
never seen
perfect
it.
version of what I'm talking about, and I mean British humor in general, I enjoy, like the You know, Monty Python was the first time I really
They're on my list.
came across that. Like Holy Grail.
Yeah,
And
it's up there. It's probably my favorite of all. But wait, but if you sat people down to watch Bronson,
no. Okay, no.
I don't know if anybody but you, now that I'm starting to look at Twisted
Okay.
Nightmare over here, would be laughing because that movie is really hard. It's not.
But
I see what you're saying, but
you can't take it too seriously because, like I said, I don't think that
because
that-
he paints himself completely black and completely gets naked and will kill anybody who walks through the door at any minute by just snapping their neck. You can't take that too seriously. I mean, it's pretty, and he's the biggest criminal in English history, right?
Well, as
Right.
far as like how
going
many years
times he's been to jail,
yeah,
right?
and how many charges he's had against him, yeah. But that's
Yeah,
what I mean.
that's
Like,
hilarious.
jeez. So there's, I'm trying to like at least
I get what-
branch out and
I get
say
what you're
that
saying.
that there are movies that have comedic areas to them.
Sure.
That I enjoy the comedy, but it doesn't. I don't sit down at a drama and say like I'm not going to laugh, you know, that kind of a thing. I'll say like, you know, if something's funny, then you know I'm gonna react to it properly. I'm not gonna, you know.
Well, that's like Silver Linings Playbook. Is that a drama or is that a comedy? For some people, it's
There's
combination.
funny parts to it,
it's
yeah.
hilarious. There's a lot of great things in that. I mean, he's especially funny when Bradley Cooper runs up to the person at his school and she freaks out. She's like, "You're supposed to, you know, you have a restraining order. You're supposed to stay away from me." And he's like, "I'm gonna take this as a silver lining." And he's all like getting happy, and she's freaked out by him. It's kind of serious, but he has no clue what he's doing to that lady. So
Yeah.
I get that aspect of comedy, but would I say sit down and watch this comedy? Here's Silver Linings Playbook. I don't think
no,
so.
probably
Yeah.
not. But a lot of times, and maybe that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that a well-formed movie is not going to just be one thing
Oh, that's
necessarily.
fair. Yeah.
And I mean, look at Quentin Tarantino movies. I mean, those movies you wouldn't consider. I wouldn't consider any of them comedies, but every movie has comedy in it. At least, yeah, every
yeah,
movie, has
absolutely.
all of his movies,
Yeah,
have comedy.
absolutely.
Some of them more than others, but I mean, like even like Django Unchained. I mean, his most recent one has some funny parts to it, but they're not funny in the overt way. They're funny in the like, let's look back at what happened, you know, 150 years ago in these particular situations. And they have the whole scene in there with Jonah Hill. I mean, that's the reason why.
Yeah.
I mean, let's laugh at these idiots. Let's laugh at these
It is kinda
KKK
funny.
idiots,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, it's easy to do, but it's easier when you have Jonah Hill and
Somebody once said they were doing a play and a friend of theirs was critiquing it, and their friend said, "You need to find the laughter." And they said, "But it's a drama." And they said, "But you need to find the laughter." People cannot sit here for 2 hours in live theater and just watch these people emoting without some form of a break. And the only break you're going to give them is some form of laughter. So not, you know, farcical, fall down, door hitting you in the face laughter, just truth. Sometimes truth is funny to me. Actually, truth is funnier in movies to me than these set-up comedies are.
Yeah.
So
And the
I get-
high concept comedies, yeah.
I get what you're saying.
so, okay, so
But Bronson,
So a movie like what we just talked about, like Diving Bell and the Butterfly, do you remember any? Like it took me 2 seconds for a lot of these movies we talked about to come up with a funny part to it. Diving Bell, the Butterfly, I'm not coming up with anything.
yeah,
So that movie to me is kind of like a dreadful movie,
yeah.
and it may not be as fully formed of a movie as some of these other movies we've talked about. I mean, you know, like Silver Linings Playbook, like you said, is a more fully formed movie. It's got sad parts. It's got, you know, dramatic parts. It's got funny parts. And
Well, I think
and
it depends on what the story, the topic is calling for. There's no reason to break into Diving Bell and the Butterfly with something funny
with
because
slapstick comedy.
Yeah, because of everything that's happened up to that point. It wouldn't, there's not an appropriate need for that. There's no reason to, it's, you know, once they sew the eyeball up, done. Yeah, there's nothing that, if you make any fun of anything at that point, it would almost come across as cruel. So I can see why that's not, you know, it doesn't have those tones. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's not fully formed. I just think it's formed differently than something like Silver
It
Linings
makes me
Playbook.
not want to watch it again, though.
Never again.
I mean, but
And I
that's,
knew that going into it. It's a brilliant movie. Loved it. I thought it was brilliant, but I don't want to participate in that world ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since somebody told me it had a pretty good ending. That is not true. It is
Yeah, no,
not.
it's not.
Yeah,
well,
no.
he finished his book.
Oh, yay.
But see, to me, like I'd much rather go back to a Fargo or a movie like that than that movie, because there's more there for me, you know. And even like I could watch. I mean, I told you I watched Diving Bell and the Butterfly, and then I turned right around and watched it again like a couple days later, because I felt like I wasn't like getting the proper emotional response, and maybe I'm just trying to work through why I wasn't getting that.
Because you were detached, because you were smart.
Maybe
Because that movie is just too much.
Maybe. And maybe I was just trying, maybe I was detaching myself and trying to be like, oh, how'd they do that shot? It's a good movie to analyze too, as far as like how'd they do that shot type of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's meaty as far as that's concerned. So let's go from Diving Bell and the Butterfly. Oh, jeez. That'll be in the title description. It'll be like comedies. We speak about movies like Bronson and Diving Bell and the Butterfly.
I dare you. I think you should. It should be one of the pictures too. People will be like, "What is wrong with them?"
That's very counterculture right there. Well, let's talk about like movies that are straight out comedies.
Okay.
Like Blazing Saddles.
Which I have never fully seen all the way.
Okay.
And I'm embarrassed because I'm a huge Mel Brooks fan.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, when it came to me, I just couldn't get into it. I don't know what it was, but I love History of the World Part 1.
Yeah.
I love Young Frankenstein.
I love Young Frankenstein.
Oh, I could not stop imitating Peter Boyle. Suba Duba. Yeah. And to this day, it just
Or
comes to
Frau
me.
Blucher. And
Yeah. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
High Anxiety. Have
I
you ever
haven't seen that one. Is that the one with silent movie? Or
No.
it's called Silent Movie. There's a movie
there
that
is.
you did.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, and that was okay. It's literally a silent movie, which you have to adapt yourself to. You have to adjust yourself to, I guess, is what it was. But for whatever reason, I've never seen Blazing Saddles. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I didn't see Blazing Saddles until I saw all of those other movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Young Frankenstein, Spaceballs, all those movies, History of War Part 1, and then finally I saw Blazing Saddles. And it's a, whatever, a million jokes a minute type of a movie, like Airplane, which I also really enjoy. Airplane, even though it's kind of like it's dated, there's certain references in Airplane that are definitely dated. Like I didn't whatever, they'll make fun of, I don't know, Walter Mondale or some, but like some sort of politician at the time who
Right.
has no bearing right now. But still, I think that those Mel Brooks movies, especially like, I mean, Blazing Saddles, you can't really. I was hearing, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but they're talking about they had kids and like they're talking about their kids quoting Young Frankenstein, like that kind of like it's a cross generational type of a movie,
Sure,
where it's funny and it's not absurd. I mean, it is absurd, but it's not not what's
offensive.
the word? Offensive. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Blazing Saddles.
Like Blazing Saddles is,
Yeah.
and Blazing Saddles is offensive right off the bat. I
Right.
mean, I know you said you
And
haven't seen it, but
well, I've seen.
but it's not
some of it.
offensive as far as like it's using vernacular of maybe the time, or it's in some ways pointing out racial insensitivity. It is pointing out racial insensitivity and all that stuff, but it's doing it kind of like a black comedian would do it. And in fact, Richard Pryor wrote a portion of that movie.
Wasn't he supposed to originally be in it, and he had to jump out at the
and
last
then
moment?
Cleavon Little
Yeah.
came in as the black sheriff.
Because that's on everybody's top 10 list. Everybody's. And I have to say, once again, I haven't seen it all the way through, but for me, I hate to say force myself, but I'm going to have to sit down and watch it because I really do enjoy all the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that sense of humor that he has that I enjoy, but for whatever reason, maybe it's that topic makes me a little uncomfortable.
It's not all about the black, sheriff. I mean, there's so many other subplots. It's not even funny. I mean, I don't even think the black sheriff comes into the situation until, 15 minutes in the movie. So it's not really even like it's, specifically about race relations, and it's not like a serious movie, or it doesn't deal with it seriously. It's but it's still a lot of fun. and there's like fourth wall breaking and stuff like that. I mean, seriously, breaking of walls, including the fourth wall. But it's really
Do they
funny.
play on that as a joke?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah. There's
good.
some really meta stuff that happens in that at the end of that movie.
He has
close
a
to the
way
end
of
that movie.
doing obvious things that just the huge joint in History of the World Part 1.
Yeah.
It's-
Or even It's Good to
wait,
Be the
stop.
King. That's
Yeah, oh,
that's
that's
that's breaking the fourth wall
That's
too.
hilarious too.
But it works, you know.
Yeah.
And in Spaceballs, they do that. I mean, there's the scene in Spaceballs where they're rewinding. They go to the Spaceball
yeah,
store and they
yeah,
get the
yeah.
VHS of Spaceballs and rewind it
Yeah,
to the
that's
point
good.
in which they are playing right at that point.
Well, he does funny, obvious jokes that you would think, how come nobody thought of that before? Pizza the Hut, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as it came out of his brain, it's so obviously funny that you can't not do it. So,
Yeah.
and then the big helmet for the Darth Vader.
Yeah,
you
and when he
can't
goes
not
into
do
when he
it.
goes to Tatooine or the Sand
Yeah.
Country, he has like the big white helmet, like the big sand helmet.
That's great.
Yeah, no, those are good movies and they're fun and you do laugh. I think people nowadays maybe, I don't know, especially kids nowadays. I don't know how accessible that is for kids nowadays if they would spend the time on, you know, even a movie like Spaceballs, because that was so of that time. Spaceballs was.
I don't know. I
There
think
is
Star Wars has
around, but
yeah, it's gone from generation to generation. I know parents who are watching that with their kids, and their kids are just as excited about it. My brother, you know, they went out and saw Phantom Menace with their kids when they first came out, and they're excited about the new one coming up, and he sees all those films with them. So I think it's cross-generational.
But
It'd be
ultimately-
interesting to see.
yeah, ultimately
I don't think a lot of Mel Brooks movies are appropriate for
no. Well,
younger.
History of the World Part 1 isn't.
definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a shadow, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Young Frankenstein is
Yeah,
pretty good.
It's
I mean,
borderline.
you got Terry Garr who's
Yeah.
not wearing a lot, but
yeah, and then Cloris Leachman with her pointy chest.
Okay. Pointy chest.
I was trying to figure out how to say that.
All right. Well, I mean, Kentucky Fried Movie. Did you see that movie?
No, I haven't.
It's okay. I mean, it is much more of the time. It's like a sketch movie, kind of. I'm trying to think of movie 43. Did you see that?
No.
Don't watch it. It's also a sketch movie. It's kind of like a SNL type thing, but it's a movie and I mean, movie 43 had like a bunch of people in, like Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber and Naomi Watts.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Halle Berry. Where did they get? How did they get all these people to do this?
Well, I mean, it was like one day of shooting for each of them. I mean, it's like 5 minutes of each of them has like a 5-minute scene.
And that's
and
it.
they're all interstitials. Like they're all, or not interstitials. They have an interstitial. Like Greg Kinnear goes to this guy. I can't even remember. I don't know how it all works. Basically, a guy goes into a movie studio and why am I talking about movie 43? It doesn't matter. We're not going to talk about movie 43. But anyway, Kentucky Fried Movie is kind of like that, where they're sketches and it's all put together in a movie. And I think it's made by the same guys who did. It's the Zucker brothers and Abrams and the Zucker brothers. They did Airplane, and I think they did Airplane too. And they also did Top Secret with
Right.
Val Kilmer. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I have. You know, to be honest with you, those films, they're on everybody's top 10 list too. And that kind of humor just doesn't do it for me. I don't know
Really?
what it is. I was just sitting here trying to define what the difference between a Mel Brooks film and an Airplane film is. There's really not much of a difference. But when you started talking about Mel Brooks, I started getting excited about wanting to see them again.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing about Airplane that pulls me back to it. And I went to see that in the movie theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was young, but and everybody's laughing, and I was like, I don't get it. I just
Well, but I
didn't
mean,
get
like,
it.
so the stuff like Roger, what's your vector, Victor? I mean, that you don't. That's not really. Or when he takes off the sunglasses and there's sunglasses underneath, or when he's like getting ready in the mirror and it's not the mirror,
Right.
and
It's clever, but it doesn't make me,
so that doesn't like twist something in you. Like to me, like maybe that's the engineer in me. It's like, oh, how did he have like smaller sunglasses underneath his sunglasses? That
yeah,
kind
it's
of a
clever.
thing.
It's a neat idea, but it's not like anything from
Groundbreaking.
Well, for me, anything in a Mel Brooks film, it's the big joint. Wait, stop! There's papayas. Anybody got papayas? And you're like, what? Why are they stopping for paper? And then he rolls out the big joint, and you're like, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then this is the way that they stop the Roman soldiers from coming after. It's funny.
Yeah.
But for me, the airplane is almost a little too farcical, too slapstickish.
Or just kind of like surface.
Don't call me Shirley, or whatever
Yeah.
that thing is. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I need to
Or
revisit.
like when the classic example of that would be like, he has a drinking problem and then he pours the glass like over his face instead of pouring it in his.
Yeah, I just.
So if you don't laugh at the drinking problem thing, then
it
that
just
whole
doesn't
movie's
do it
gonna
for
be.
me.
One thing I will tell you though, if you haven't seen Top Secret, there's a scene in there where they go into a Swedish bookshop. It's Val Kilmer and the love interest girl, and the way that they shot it is when they shot the scene, everybody moved backwards and spoke normally, so that when they play the movie out, they took the film and put it in reverse, so that they're walking forward and the words that they're saying are backwards on screen.
To what purpose?
Because it's supposed to be like Swedish. It's supposed to sound Swedish, but it's
funny.
not Swedish. It's them saying things backward. But they point out.
funny.
But so initially you're kind of like, wait, this sounds weird, but it kind of sounds like they're. Wait a second, how'd they do that? And then you start realizing like he has a book in his hands, and instead of like when they shot the scene, he blew off all this dust from the book. But when you see it played out, you see all this dust like very quickly accumulate onto the book, and him breathe in very quickly. And he takes the book, and he needs to like get the book or he needs to put the book up, but it needs to go up really high. So he throws the book up like whatever, like 10 feet, and it like automatically fits into the spot where it needs to fit into.
Yeah.
Everything about that scene is pointing out that the scene ends with Val Kilmer going up a fireman's pole.
Oh, instead of coming
down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pointing out, we're doing some, film trickery here, but it's having fun with it. And to me, like, as like a kid, when I saw that, I was like, my mind is blown. I was like, this
How'd
is
they do
crazy.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have to like analyze how they, like them walking backwards or whatever they had to do to make it work. It was really cool.
That's clever, though.
It is clever, and it's one of those things where it's like it's not laugh out loud funny necessarily, but the whole time it was happening, I was like, "This is happening!" This is so cool. I was also going to talk about, I guess, absurdist comedies, which like The Jerk in the 80s.
It's on everybody's list, and there's one or two things that make me laugh in that film, but it doesn't hit me. Maybe I need to spend a day. I was thinking about this too. It's just like scary movies. The horror one that we did, I think is very, subjective. What a person finds funny or what a person finds scary is definitely subjective. It's based on your upbringing and who you are as a person, that kind of stuff. And maybe I need to revisit it now that I'm older and I might get some more of the jokes. But I mean, I remember I remember chuckling over Steve Martin, just the way that he spoke and some of the things that,
I grew up a young black boy.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
And he drank tab and, that's funny. But it's not one of those ones that immediately comes to mind as, oh, I need to watch a funny movie. Let's pop that in,
And that's the other thing. For me, like that movie I saw kind of after... I mean, by the time I was old enough to see it, like, I watched it probably, 10 years ago or something. And I haven't necessarily revisited it. But like you said, there's a lot of people that have that on their lists. And so I don't have as much of a reaction to that movie even as I do to Airplane and those other movies. And I think maybe it has something to do with Steve Martin as an actor. I don't know. I mean, have you seen him in any movies where he's just an amazing actor? I thought he was great in
depends on how you
Little House of Horrors. House of Horrors.
Yeah.
I mean, he was
Little
in his
Shop of
role,
Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah.
Well, it depends on how you define that because what's the movie where he plays where his body gets taken over by Lily Tomlin? All of Me, I think it's called.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, there was talk about how that's a missed Oscar nomination for him because it's such a physical comedy, and we don't look at physical comedy
He's
as
like acting like a woman would move, or he's like moving.
No,
like
what he's doing is he's trying to resist her doing stuff through his body.
Okay.
So he's resisting it most of the time. I believe that's what that movie's called. It's just like Eddie Murphy and The Nutty Professor.
Yeah.
He plays all those characters at the table, but no Oscar nomination because we don't take comedy seriously.
Yeah.
Although comedy roles and movies have been nominated, but not enough in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know how you would define Steve Martin as an actor. You know, I like him in Parenthood. I like him in
Which I haven't seen.
Yeah, I like him in Roxanne.
He was pretty good in
Yeah,
Roxanne.
but as the movie that he directed with about L.A., living in L.A., I can't think of what
LA Story?
is that what it's called?
I think so.
With Sarah Jessica Parker.
I think so, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny actually, because it's when ATMs first came around and they would walk up to the ATM and they would get money and they would turn and there would be somebody there with a gun holding them up, you know, the whole threat of it. And the big Amber Alert signs. When they first came out, they started, I don't know if they started in LA, but they were huge in LA, and, you know, traffic congestion, that kind of stuff. And those signs speak to him in the movie, and they answer questions about his love life. And it technologically looks, you know, 25 years ago, but it's a clever thing. But I don't know how you would define Steve Martin as an actor. Do I think he's great? Yeah, but I don't know if he's ever shown a range.
But he never had like a Good Will Hunting type role.
No, not like Robin Williams.
Yeah.
No, actually, no. Interesting.
All right. What about, are there other movies on your list?
Well, if you're talking about obvious comedies, I of course had History of the World, Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, Holy Grail. We got to spend a little bit more time on Monty Python. Okay, Monty Python was something that the group of friends that I went to high school with really loved, but I never really got it. And then they were showing one of their comedy sketch live shows, a tape of that.
Flying Circus.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And they were all walking across the stage in the most crazy, absurd, and they were just walking, and they would do these weird limps and these weird pratfalls and all this
The
stuff.
Ministry of Silly Walks.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, there's a skit called The Ministry of Silly Walks.
I was done. From that point on, I just got everything that they did. And the thing in Holy Grail, they set up obvious jokes, but it's the small little things that I'm not so sure you hear on the first time, like the coconuts.
Yep.
When the guy comes, you know, up to the castle, like he's making a sound of a horse with coconuts. And the conversation is not about what that guy wants to speak about. It's about, where did you get coconuts? Like, what is that? Coconuts? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, where did you get them? So it's not all the obvious stuff, the knight that gets, you know, all
Black Knight.
Yeah, the Black Knight gets all that stuff's funny too. It's the small little things, like in The Meaning of Life. Have you seen The Meaning of Life?
I love The Meaning of Life.
Okay, when the stork flies over the house and the lady's washing the dishes.
And the baby falls out.
Yeah, and she's like, get that, love. And it's small.
Yeah. Well, that whole thing, I mean, they're sending up religion. I mean, every sperm is sacred.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I was raised strict Catholic, so
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's bad, but funny.
But funny.
Yeah.
And then they had the whole dance number, including babies with every sperm is sacred.
Then they caused a big stir with The Life of Brian. I mean, it caused a huge stir. But that's the least of their... For me, it's not as funny as the other ones. I don't know why. It just isn't. There's a couple funny moments, you know, when he opens the window and they're all like, "Hail Jesus," and he's like,
I think they had more of an agenda with The Life of Brian than they did with the other ones. Although I think Meaning of Life in some ways is a little bit more snarky, or a little bit more kind of like accusatory to the audience. I mean, especially the kind of like close to the end where you've got the waiter who like takes you, he's like, come with me.
Oh, yeah.
And he takes you out there and he shows you his house when he was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, oh, you don't care about it? Well, screw you, you know? And he, you know, he gets all mad, and it's basically them trying to say, like, we get caught up in all of this extraneous stuff, and we need to kind of remember, you know, where we came from and what's important. And that's kind of their way of saying, like, we don't know the meaning of life, but, you know, it's probably not this, which is a bunch of people in a house out in the country eating salmon mousse and dying because of the salmon mousse, and not realizing or not caring that they've died, just, you know, like getting in their cars and, you know, going off.
As long as their posh lifestyle continues on, they don't care where it continues.
As long as
on.
everybody else thinks that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's what matters to them, even though now they're dead.
It's interesting because I just sat here and said that Airplane and that farcical, you know, pratfall thing is not funny to me that much, but Monty Python really falls into that category too. I don't know. There's something about their sense of humor.
Well, but the perfect example of that, as far as like just bold faced, like physical humor, is, have you seen the skit skit where they have it's just two guys standing next to kind of like a big pool, a big reservoir type pool, and one guy's it's got like nice dancing music, and this guy's dancing around and he's slapping the other guy with these little fishes,
Yeah.
slapping them in the face,
Yeah.
and then the music stops, and then the guy who's been getting slapped has this huge fish and just smacks the guy
Yeah.
into the pool. That it's hilarious, and that's it. That's the whole skit.
Yeah.
It's probably 30 seconds, 20
Yeah.
seconds.
Their minds, the way that they think, it's completely unusual. It's completely original.
And they'll break the fourth wall too.
Oh, all the time. Well, the fish and the meaning of life. Oh, here we go. Here's the meaning of life. Here we go. Here we go. This is what we've been waiting for this whole entire time.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So yeah, I wanted to go back to that for just a little bit. But do you remember a movie called What's Up, Doc? With it's a strange
I
transition.
do remember it, but I never saw it.
It's a Peter Bogdanovich film with
okay.
Ryan O'Neal and Barbara Streisand. I know it's a strange leap from Monty Python to Peter Bogdanovich.
I was thinking about What's About Bob.
No, yeah,
Or What About Bob,
A lot
but
of
that's
people
not
like
right.
that movie too, but this is 72, I think it is. Yeah, 72. It's a farcical, over the top comedy, and it's just one of those ones that when I was a kid, and my mom was like, "What is so funny about this movie?" To this day, I don't even know, but every time I see an image from it, and I was going over these lists, and it was on a couple people's lists, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about What's Up, Doc?" And then I started thinking about it, and it started making me laugh all over again. I haven't seen that movie in 20 years. So if you ever get a chance and it's just on, you and Steph should watch it actually,
Yeah.
because it's not offensive on any kind of level. Madeline Kahn, who we've not
Yeah.
mentioned yet, she's in it. She plays.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's great in this because
She's great in Blazing Saddles too.
Oh, is she?
She has like this lisp in Blazing Saddles. It's hilarious.
Well, the whole part in History of the World is hilarious too, and inappropriate for anybody who's under
Yeah.
a certain age. But she plays the conservative, reserved character in What's Up, Doc. Very meek and mild, almost skittish, almost. And it's interesting to know that that's who it is, because you're thinking she's always over the top, and she's got that voice.
Yes.
But this is very reserved, and if you ever get a chance, watch it. It's
Okay.
just one of those kind of farcical comedies, a little bit of a throwaway, but worth checking out if you get a chance.
Cool.
But yeah, but I have things like This Is the End, another strange leap into a whole nother comedy genre, 40-Year-Old Virgin, those whole
Okay, so
super
you're
bad-
getting into the Apatow disciples, basically, which I did want to
It's a
talk
good way to
about.
put that.
And I think that a lot of that is centered around Freaks and Geeks. Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah, I have, and that's where they all came from, right?
Yeah, and it was only around for a season, and it was a good show.
Yeah.
It was a really good show. But there's some amazing actors that were in that. James Franco, Seth Rogen, all those guys were kind of getting into the business. And Judd Apatow, who started off as a stand-up comedian, lived with Adam Sandler for a while in the late 80s, early 90s in New York. And in fact, that's why they kind of did, what was that movie called? The stand-up movie. It's escaping me now. The stand-up movie was Adam Sandler, Seth Rogen, Judd Apatow directed
I've
it.
never seen that. No, I
Yeah,
know what
it
you're
was-
talking about.
It was decent, and I can't remember what it's called.
but that's the only time they've worked together,
But
right?
that's the only time that they've worked together. Yeah, I think since, yeah. Mhm.
And of all the things that they've done, you would think that they would have crossed over somewhere else.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Funny people?
Funny People, that's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but that's not actually one of my favorite movies. I think A 40-Year-Old Virgin is great, and Knocked Up is good too. Did you like Knocked Up?
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
All right.
Yes, I did.
It
It's
seemed
super.
like have some sort of backlash to it at some point, but I don't know why.
Yeah. Who knows?
I think people were trying to like point out how Judd Apatow can have an irreverent comedy, but still have that kind of heart, or give the audience what they want or what they think they want at the end. You've got a woman who gets pregnant inadvertently, and she ends up keeping the baby, and everything works out okay, as opposed to what could possibly happen in real life.
why does something like that get backlash? Is it because it's about a female character who chooses to do what she does? Why is Superbad not get? Why was 40-Year-Old Virgin not getting backlash?
Well, 40-Year-Old Virgin, you get backlash because I think that's not something that's necessarily. I mean, that was kind of an extraneous example of a person. It's just
I see
basically
what you're saying.
a dork who nothing bad is going on. I mean, he finds love, and he decides to wait until his wedding day, but it wouldn't be the movie wouldn't be defined about him waiting until his wedding day, but it's tied up into a nice little bow because he waits to have sex for the first time until his wedding day. And then Knocked Up comes right after that, and it's tied up into a little bow because you've got this idiot guy gets this woman pregnant who has all of these aspirations, and then, all of a sudden he becomes more responsible but is still able to hang out with his friends or whatever. And they decide to have the kid and everything works out.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when Kevin Smith did Jersey Girl, and everybody flipped out about that because it was a movie done by Kevin Smith about a little girl, and it was innocent and sweet and kind, and it's not that bad of a movie. It's not as bad as everybody gives it. Everybody gives it a hard time. I think it's that same thing.
That was also after Gigli too, so you had that whole Ben Affleck Gigli thing. I think so.
Yeah, well, that's unfair because one has nothing to do with the other.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think all of those films that we just mentioned, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Superbad, they all
Superbad is, I think, the best of all of them. I think
it's hard for me to
but
say,
it's
the
not
best
a Judd Apatow. I mean, he didn't direct it, but he was the hands-on producer of that too. But
there's the reason why I was bringing them all together again is because there is a heart to them, and there is a sensitivity to them, and there is a kindness to them. The humor's there, and it's definitely farcical and over the top. What's his wife's name?
Leslie Mann.
Yes, the drunk scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin. Her blow into this, hilarious, hilarious. We can still
she
have
pukes
sex.
all over him. Oh my gosh,
hilarious! It's hilarious, and she plays it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And even the one that they just did together with Paul Rudd. That's not bad.
Yeah, This Is 40.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't.
No, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a tone and a sensibility that I like. I really do.
Paul Rudd?
No, all of them.
Okay, yeah.
Judd Apatow, all of them. There's just they go for the fart joke, but it's wrapped with the big heart around it. I know that's a weird statement, but it's true. I mean, especially with Superbad, we've talked about this before. You know, the touch of the nose, the sensitivity.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's got a heart, and the fact that he wrote the Emma Stone character the way that he does. We talked about that before too. You know, she doesn't turn out to be the pretty girl who's a jerk. She turns out to be the pretty girl who makes the guy realize, don't be like that, dude. That's not why I don't like you.
Well, Seth Rogen wrote that, and Evan Goldberg wrote that.
Interesting.
Judd Apatow.
Right.
They wrote that when they were like in the 13 or 14 or 15.
Right.
When they were little kids. Basically.
Right, because they were originally going to be in it, right?
Exactly.
And then they just grew up too fast before.
And the two characters are called Seth and Evan.
Oh, yeah,
so
right.
It's really neat. And obviously Seth Rogen's in the movie, but he plays a cop. But he's still in the movie.
Funny though.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Yeah.
And Bill Hader.
Yeah.
You know, before Bill Hader kind of like started moving off into his own thing. But the other one I was going to bring up was Bridesmaids. Have you seen that movie?
Well, yes, I have. And it's interesting how we went from Monty Python, Bronson to, you know.
You're going to keep bringing that up?
Well, yeah, of course, because it was a left field. I mean, it's not even on the playing field.
Like, I want to challenge you.
Well, it did. I was like, what? Now I have to go back and watch it again, which I've always said I probably would because I enjoyed that film. I was glad you brought that to my attention. And, you know, I'm becoming the biggest Tom Hardy fan as we go along. I mean, he just keeps topping
Locked
himself.
was great.
Yeah, he keeps topping himself for me. But anyway, the jump around that we've gone from Monty Python to 40-Year-Old Virgin to Bridesmaids, it's interesting how they are different forms of comedy, but there's something true about all of them. They all have a heart. They all have a kind nature about their soul, if you will, for lack of a better term. But the thing about Bridesmaids that I'm glad you brought up is it made me laugh from beginning to middle to end, all the way from the time that she's trying to climb the gate at the very beginning. That's hilarious. And I will say this, and I'm glad that we're recording this because I've often said this. It's a shame it was nominated for Best Screenplay.
Yes.
And she was nominated Melissa McCarthy. Deservedly so.
Yeah.
But why is something like that never nominated for Best Picture? Out of 10 films, the Woody Allen comedy, Midnight in Paris, if you want to call that a comedy, although most of his films are comedic, they put Annie Hall on the list of top 100 films of all time. I was like, I don't really consider that a comedy, but that might just be my sense of it.
I would consider that a comedy.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, there's scenes in there. I mean, the scene where there's the guy they're standing in line with to watch the movie, and there's like the critic guy basically. Yeah. He's like, I brought in the critic who actually wrote the piece that you're talking about. Would you like to say that to his face? I mean, that kind of stuff.
And the cocaine, and there's funny parts about it, but I don't.
When he was a kid, and all that
and
stuff.
I just don't think of it as comedy. I get why people do. But anyway, back to Bridesmaids.
Yep.
The thing that perplexes me is why is the Academy not open to that being a Best Picture nomination? It makes you laugh. It makes you cry. It makes you, it makes you everything. Every emotion you have, it has a really deep heart to it. That scene between them two right before she gets married is really, it's sweet. It's nice. The conversation Melissa McCarthy has with her about, dude, seriously, like, don't mess up your best friend relationship. I want to be your best friend and I just met you. It's sweet, but entwined in all of that is.
But then somebody walks out into the middle of a street and evacuates themselves in a wedding dress.
The whole scene in the bathroom. Don't look at me. It's great.
No, yeah, it is.
So why do you think that people in the Academy don't take those movies seriously, even though it's a comedy, as a Best Picture nomination? Why?
Maybe because of scenes like the crapping in the bathroom, the diarrhea bathroom scene, things like that. I mean, you got to think, of the people that are voting, how many of them are older than 50 years old? Probably a good chunk of them.
Yeah, I guess there's a logical reason why it happens, but my point is that
it should be in the running, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing about making a person laugh out loud to where they produce tears is as hard of an emotion to produce because you're not seeing it live. They're not getting reactions from you, and comedy sometimes is a reactionary thing. Having the audience there fuels the comedy even further. But in the film, you don't get that. But making a person burst out in laughter, I think, is almost harder to do than to burst out in tears out of something sad. I mean, those emotions are on both spectrums, either side, if you will. But I think it's even harder to make a person laugh. So why don't they take them more seriously? I keep saying seriously, even though we're talking about comedy.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like I said, from a practical standpoint, I understand why it is, but I think in some ways the Golden Globes does it right, for lack of a better word, in that they separate them.
Yeah, they have two different categories.
But it's weird that they put comedy and musical together, which is kind of awkward. But at least they're recognizing comedies. That's something. At least they're saying, this is something that's important enough for us to single out.
Well, I guess my point is that why is comedy not considered a genre worth giving an accolade to, the top accolade to? People almost assume it's easier to make a comedy than it is to make a drama. I actually think the reverse. I think it's way harder to make people laugh than it is to make people cry.
You can make people cry with music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like with just looking at a person and having the right music can do it. You don't even know anything about that person, and some people can just lose it.
Purposely write something to be funny and get that to come out as funny and the audience react and laugh out loud, I think that's really hard to do. It's a shame that they don't take, because I do think Bridesmaids deserve, and they had they had 10 nominations, but they only had 9 that year. And I'm thinking, why couldn't they just
give it?
Yeah, why not? I don't get it. So, but it's funny.
It is. And I feel like the good thing about that is that it was a female-centric movie, so it kind of like proved in some ways to the studios that they could do that. And then off of that, they made The Heat.
Which
Paul
was
Feig
okay.
so the guy who directed it, Paul Feig, he also directed like half of the episodes of Freaks and Geeks back in the late 90s, early 2000, maybe it was 2000. Anyway, and he also directed the Judd Apatow's some episodes of Judd Apatow's second show, Undeclared, which is actually a decent movie.
Never even heard of it.
It had Charlie Hunnam was in it from
Sons of Anarchy.
Yes,
and
Jay Baruchel, who was in he was the skinny guy in Knocked Up.
Yeah,
and he's been in a couple other movies. But anyway,
Danger from $1 Million Baby, isn't he? Danger? Isn't that
I
his
don't
name?
know.
Yeah,
maybe he was. Okay,
Yeah.
like I said, I haven't seen that in a long time.
No, what's his name? Anyway,
but anyway, it was just about like freshmen in college, basically. That's what it, and Seth Rogen was in the movie too, or I'm sorry, in the show too. But anyway, those two guys, Judd Apatow, Paul Feig, did this, and then they kind of like went together and have made movies since then. And Paul Feig's, I think his directorial debut was, or his movie directorial debut was Bridesmaids, and then he made The Heat. And I think, the good thing is that they're starting to be acceptable. It's starting to be accepted that female-driven comedies can happen. I mean, they just came out with Tammy, which was another Melissa McCarthy movie, which didn't do very well.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see what else they come up with. Skeleton Twins is another movie that came out. That's
Never heard
got
of it.
Kristen Wiig in it. Kristen Wiig and Bill Hader play brother
Actually,
and
I
sister.
have seen the
trailer?
At Redbox, I saw the picture of the
Oh,
post.
it's out on
I think
video
s-
already. Wow.
Or
That's
maybe
great.
I saw a trailer. Or I'm not sure
Okay.
what I've seen, but I know I've seen something
Well,
about
that looks interesting to me, but it's more of an independent comedy. But is there anything else that you wanted to?
No.
to talk about?
I think Bridesmaids up the top of the list. It's a
Yeah.
comedy that's come out recently.
It's great.
It really is. It makes you laugh from beginning, middle to end, and that's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the thing that's fueling this whole what has taken to 2014 to realize that women are funny. I mean, we just mentioned a gazillion of them: Holly
Yeah.
Hunter, Madeline Kahn. I mean, there's
But I mean,
tons of them.
Even look at what
Cloris Leachman.
look at what Emma Stone did in Superbad, and I mean a lot of the movies that she's been in, really hilarious.
Yeah, and Zombieland, even though she's
Yeah.
not so funny, but
No,
still,
it's
she has
some funny scenes though.
Yeah, but maybe it takes Melissa McCarthy getting an Oscar nomination. I mean, she breaks all kinds of
to legitimize.
stereotypes when it comes to women in Hollywood, the size that she is, all that stuff is completely debated about. But she's hilarious in that, and she's funny in Heat. Actually, I liked her probably more than Sandra Bullock, but I liked what Sandra Bullock did too. Did you see that film?
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it worked. There's something about it that worked. But Sandra Bullock's been pulling this off for a couple decades
Oh,
too.
yeah. I mean,
so
she's been
this
doing-
congeniality and all that other stuff. So why anybody would doubt, especially Kristen Wiig? I mean, why would anybody doubt those people? It just makes no sense. Sometimes I hear stories about what studios and people backing and producers want to put their money towards. And, George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and all those people come up immediately. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's pretty much surefire hit. But what about it's always those people you're not expecting you should put your money on, because who would have ever thought Melissa McCarthy would be an Academy Award nominated actress?
Well, she had a successful show for a while. I mean, it's still on Mike and Molly.
Well, actually, that's after.
That was after her
this is
Bridesmaids?
Mike and Molly is about the same time, actually. She was on the Gilmore Girls back in, one of the best TV shows that most people never saw. Yeah, she plays a character on that. That's where I discovered her then. And then I've seen her in small roles from then on. It was this that jutted her to,
Yeah, she
she's
kinda went to the
famous
top,
now.
yeah.
Well, she won the Emmy a year or two after she was nominated for the Oscar for Mike and
Oh,
Molly.
I see.
She's
Okay.
funny on that too.
I haven't seen it. It's on
Yeah.
my TV station. I haven't seen any of
Yeah,
the shows.
she's
but
funny, man.
that's cool. I just want to bring up a couple other things. Some of we haven't talked anything about the way early comedies. Marx Brothers. Have you seen any of those Marx Brothers movies? Charlie Chaplin.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Three Stooges we used to watch on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon it would come on and we would just chuckle and just laugh, and something about the way they just do things. But yeah, I don't have a big history with older movies when it comes to comedy, because Bringing Up Baby comes up a lot on
Yeah.
people's lists too.
I mean, in those two, I mean, Bringing Up Baby and It Happened One Night, and to a lesser extent, I think His Girl Friday, which I don't think you've seen. That
No,
one
I
yet.
haven't seen that.
It's also Cary Grant, and it's him and Rosalind Russell, and it's a more of a. I guess you wouldn't consider it like a slapstick comedy like Bringing Up Baby, where there's a lot of physical comedy necessarily, but it's a lot of fast dialogue and going back and forth. And have you seen Hudsucker Proxy? Another Coen Brothers movie.
Interesting.
Son of a gun.
You're right. And it's funny because that's one of the ones where I've seen it once and I have to
You got to see it again.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody says
Paul
that.
Newman's great. And I mean, Tim Robbins has a subdued performance. And it works. I mean, he plays basically a buffoon. And everybody, I mean, Jennifer Jason Leigh she plays the Rosalind Russell character, basically. I think that's kind of, I don't know if I even read that, but that's what she is. She's playing that character from that movie.
Interesting.
Really. And she's a, fast talking, newspaper lady. And that's what she is. So, and so those movies, those older movies, His Girl Friday, It Happened One Night, and Bringing Up Baby, I can watch those movies pretty easily. You can kind of put it in and watch it and have fun with it. But then, some of the Marx Brothers movies I've seen, Duck Soup actually is a movie that's on. To me, it's kind of like above some of the other movies that I've seen.
It's number one on most people's lists.
As far as it's one of those movies where there's a lot of kind of slapstick physical type comedy, but then there's also pointed, commentary on government at the time, which it's interesting that they have a way to wrap that all up in there, even in how they discuss the names of people, and all of that. I mean, we can go into Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, and Buster Keaton, which there's some on Netflix. There's a couple Buster Keaton movies that are really good. The General and Sherlock Jr. are both, they're really small movies. They're 45 minutes long. So they're easy to watch and they're fun. And it's something you could sit a kid in front of them and they would probably enjoy it.
I love to watch a kid discover those movies.
Yeah.
I love to watch a kid discover the Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges because they just get it. The kids
do.
Yeah, they really do.
And even, I mean, kids are watching, Tom and Jerry and Wile E. Coyote and all that stuff. These movies in some ways are very similar. I mean, they're a little bit, I think maybe a little bit more, thought-provoking maybe, but still it's that accessible. It's as accessible as cartoons. And I was talking about commentary on government, and I think if you don't have anything else, the best way to end this would be talking about my favorite comedy of all time, which is Dr. Strangelove.
I'm surprised it took us this long. It's number 2 on mine only because, not that it's a list or anything, but it was number 1, and then I saw something else that I was like, oh, let me put above that just to remind myself to talk about it. But yeah, Dr. Strangelove, what is it? He just tapped into something. I don't even know what it is.
So I think back then there was a fear. Like, I don't even know, like when I was a kid in the 80s, we did drills. We did get under the desk, like go out into the hallway and line up. And I mean, we did those drills. This is the 80s, at least for me, it was the 80s. I mean, we were still in the Cold War. And so that's all I have to reference. But I can imagine back then, it's right after the Korean War. It's the early 60s is when he came out. They came out with this movie. And just the history for that movie, he was supposed to make a war drama.
Right.
With that movie.
But he decided there's no way to tell that story.
He'd already made Spartacus, Paths of Glory. He'd already made, he made Lolita, but he'd already made those other movies. And so they put this project, this book, Red Alert, in his hands and said, make us an amazing war movie. Couldn't do it.
Right.
He could not do it.
Wasn't it somebody else's idea to make it a comedy?
Well, it was Terry Southern's the guy who wrote the script, but I mean, with most of Kubrick's movies, he was heavily involved in the script development. And so they tried to write a serious movie, but they kept on coming up with like more absurdist examples of characters, like even like, so the bomber captain and the most absurd character I think in the movie is the Jack D. Ripper, sorry. And so he is such an extreme caricature that it seemed like they kind of like were gravitating towards some of these characters and the way they dealt with the president, and the names that they gave them. I mean,
it's too obvious that it's so funny. I mean, it's so obvious.
I didn't get it. Like the first time I saw it, I was probably, 14 years old. And when you've got a president named Merkin Muffley, like I just got a spit take out of him.
Yeah, you sure did. I took a sip of water as you said that. I'm glad I didn't spit it all.
I didn't know what a Merkin was, but it was still funny to me, but it wasn't funny in the same way that it's funny to me now.
Right.
So,
well, it's got the quintessential line. There's no fight.
You can't fight in here. This is the war room.
That's hilarious. Like they make T-shirts out of that.
Yeah. And
even if you don't know the joke, you're going to look at it and think it's funny because you're going to put it together. Even if you don't know the movie, it's just.
But there's some sort of like it's absurd, but it's in a real world, and back then it was realistic in that these are the protocol for this situation. You
Right.
know, they are just all this whole plot is just following a protocol, and it is an absurdist view, or it's an absurdist action of that, or activity of that. It's like, well, you know, this could kind of happen, but instead of like really making you go see this movie and then go home and not be able to sleep because we made it so realistic, we're going to make fun of it and make you laugh so that you can kind of release some of that tension. And I think that's a lot of it. Is there's no good way to deal with this. We could all blow up tomorrow, so let's just, you know, laugh right now because we can't do anything about it.
Well, I think that he shows the absurdity of the situation because the idea that we as humans have created something like that can do what the atomic bomb can do is absurd in its nature. It's the thought of that alone, that we even had the possibilities, or we did make that. We created something that could do that.
It's now realistic, as opposed to a concept.
Yeah, it's almost too absurd to know that that's in human nature. So how do you take that seriously? You kind of have to make fun of it. And I have to say this because, you know, it got heavy all of a sudden, you know, atomic bomb. George C. Scott's performance in this movie, how he got away with it to this day. Every time I see it, I cannot believe anybody in any basic acting class would have called him a ham, said it was too over the top. His hand motions, when he's talking and his arms are going up and he's doing this, and first of all, how did he not get an Oscar nomination?
That's true.
Second of all, how did he get away with it?
So the other thing that I've read a lot about this movie, and I can't remember where I read it, but I believe that I read something that said that Stanley Kubrick's known for doing a lot of takes. I don't know back in 1962 if he did a lot of takes necessarily, but he would have George C. Scott do his normal takes.
Yeah.
And it would say, just give me 1,000%, and we'll just use one of those other ones. I just want you to do it. And all of the 1,000% takes are what's in the movie.
But they work perfectly.
Of course they do.
It just
He's
hit
like,
this.
when he's on the phone and he slaps his belly.
Hilarious.
And when he's, you know, he gets up from his chair in the war room and like ends up like falling on the ground and getting back up. And
Wait, we've talked about this. Was that for real, or was that on?
I think I think when we talked about it before, I think that he didn't do that, but he just kept going with the take, and they ended up using it.
Right, he accidentally
fell
See,
over.
That to me is funny.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is funny.
And then
'cause
he
you can-
kept going.
Yeah. It's like watching the Carol Burnett show when they start laughing inside the
They start breaking.
Yeah, that makes it even funnier. I was watching some PBS special on her, and they were
course.
showing that. And Tim Conway and
Harvey Korman.
yes, thank you. They were starting to, and they try to do that to each other every
Sure.
show, trying to break them. And you could see them starting to, and Tim Conway never broke, really, not a whole lot. Harvey kept going. Harvey, is it?
Harvey Korman,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. And you could see his lips starting to quiver. So those real things that happen in real life that really make it into the movie, like George C. Scott falling, that stuff's hysterical to me.
Well, and Peter Sellers, I mean, we haven't said anything about him yet, but he plays, I think, three roles.
Three.
He played
Yeah,
3 roles.
three.
Yeah, he was supposed to play 4, but he ended up not being able to. Well, I think he think
was
hurt
nominated.
himself, but was he nominated?
for the Oscar for Best Actor. It's
Really?
his second Oscar. Well, his first Oscar nomination.
Oh, that's so
One of
cool.
two. Yeah.
I'm really glad that he was nominated because I think he did bring something to each of those. I mean, I think my favorite character of his may be the forward air captain, the guy who interacts with Jack the Ripper, Jack D. Ripper.
Yeah, well, because he's the only one who makes sense in those scenes. Because the other guy is so
He's so intense,
crazy.
and it makes you feel like we're in this social situation where his character feels the need to fill in the gaps, like the gaps in conversation.
Yeah.
And so you
And
feel
he's so polite.
He
He's
is so polite.
respectful, and just the
That's
way he
right.
speaks to him is great.
well, and then, I mean all those scenes where he's like, yeah, you need to fight with me, and he's like, oh well, I didn't tell you, but I've got this gammy leg, and it's hilarious.
It is.
And so there's even, I mean, that movie even has some serious parts to it too, but it works as a whole, I think. And it's, first time I saw that, I was probably 14, and I don't think I understood how fun. I knew it was funny, but I didn't know why. And that's one of those movies where you don't necessarily laugh out loud, but I I mean, there may be certain scenes where you laugh out loud, but to me, like thinking about something that in that movie that's happened makes me laugh. As I don't know if I would necessarily laugh out loud if it actually happened in front of me, but just thinking back on that, and it's quotable in a lot of ways, like we said, the war room, and I mean, and the character names. I mean, you've got a major called Major Bat Guano.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're obviously having fun.
I don't know. I think it is a laugh out loud one. And I saw it much later. I don't remember how old I was, 20, 25, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. So it hit me a little bit differently. And I saw the absurdity of the situation. And I was like, why? Wait, this movie's about an atomic bomb attack and we're going to make fun. How is this going to work? Like, I didn't understand the concept, but I thought, how else to do it? I mean, it makes perfect sense. He hit a tone and an attitude. Kubrick, who comes up all the time on this show, all the time.
He should.
Yeah, he absolutely should. But when he did it right, he really did. There was that documentary at the end of Eyes Wide Shut, I think it was, where he talked about possibly regretting not making a lot of movies. But when he did make that film, he made the funniest film of that year.
Yeah.
He made the scariest film of that year. He made the war epic of that year. He made Spartacus, which was, Best Picture nominee. Won, what's his name, an Oscar.
Kirk Douglas?
No. Peter Ustinov. Not Ustinov. The slave owner, I can't think of his name. I can't believe I can't think of his name right now. It's going to drive me crazy. Peter Ustinov. Isn't that him?
I'm sure that it is. I do not know.
Laurence
Olivier? I don't know.
No.
So, yeah, I don't know. It won 4 Oscars, and it looks like it won for Best Actor Peter Ustinov in a supporting role.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Yeah.
It won 4 Oscars, cinematography, art direction, and costume design.
Was Kubrick nominated?
He was not nominated, no.
Yeah. I don't think they took him too seriously then.
No, and it's not a coincidence that we talked about sci-fi movies and 2001 came up. We talked about we talked about horror movies and The Shining came up, and now we're talking about comedies and this movie and Dr. Strange.
Well, that's my point. When he did it, he put his finger on it, put his thumbprint on it, and that was it. So he has like a definitive, you could put his movies at the top of all of these categories that we've talked about. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Kubrick again.
That's right. All right. Well, if you guys want to check us out on the web, our web page is at actorandengineer.com. On Twitter, our Twitter handle is @actorengineer, and we're at facebook.com/actorandengineer. And we'll see you next week.
Until then.
Bye.